always tell my clients when we're looking for properties to purchase or money to fundraise or to gain money, I always tell them, I said, create your love letter. We see a property one, we're competing for it, right? However, we're probably the most least qualified for this property. Probably everybody else and probably have cash. I said, but what's the difference, in terms of how do we get above and get seen above everybody else? And we call it, I said, write your love letter.
Welcome to the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast with your hosts, Charlie Cameron and Alex Schloe. This is your go-to show for cutting-edge insights from industry leaders in residential assisted living.
Whether you're ready to launch your own assisted living business or looking to invest in this fast-growing, high-impact sector, we are here to equip you with the tools, strategies, and confidence you need to succeed. Get ready to ride the silver tsunami and change the future of senior care. Now on to today's show.
All right, welcome back to today's episode of the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cameron, and today we are thrilled to have Kimberly Rodriguez on the show. Kimberly runs the Action Over Words group, which is an assisted living and adult programs consulting group. And oh my goodness, has she done an incredible amount in the industry, maybe more than anyone we've had on the podcast. So I am incredibly excited to have you here today, Kimberly. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I know that we went through your introduction and it took about, 15 minutes because you have done so much, which is incredible. Give us a briefer introduction to you and where you are right now. And then we'll jump back and talk about how you got into all of this.
Okay. All right. So where I am now, I am owner of Action Over Words. I'm an assisted living consultant and adult programs consultant, focusing on licensed programs. So I reside and I kind of go back and forth between Virginia and Texas. However, our main focus is on Virginia, Florida, and Texas, but we have operated in a total license in a total of 13 states. Our team, we kind of just focus on providing support, education, training, and walking everyone through and having an understanding in terms of everything for regulated licensed programs and providing support.
That was a great overview. And you have owned 14 of your own communities, assisted living communities as well, between you and your family. It sounds like you're offloading the last of those. And it's important for everyone on the podcast to know that you were a licensed inspector for everything adult care related for the state of Virginia for about a decade. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So assisted living, boarding homes, group homes, sober homes, adult daycare. Really, you kind of oversaw the whole gambit and own 14 homes and now run a consulting agency. So really an incredible background. Let's jump back to where it all started. So give me, how did Kimberly end up where she is today, having done so much?
Okay, so I guess the easiest way to say is I was born into it. And so, very thankful. So my mother is a respiratory therapist. I have 4 uncles who are all registered nurses, and my grandmother's a registered nurse. They were all focused on real estate investing is one part. However, of course, having the background and working with actually the local state hospitals, that's kind of how my grandmother and my mother got started. And then as I grew up and I was younger, then I kind of started doing activities directing. I started managing and doing certain aspects of the company at a very young age, moving around from all the various different properties. When I became 18 is when I kind of financially became actually owner in partnership, taking on larger roles as well as myself and my other sisters. And then I relocated. When I relocated to Williamsburg, because my family is located was more central region, so Richmond, those type of areas. My sisters and I, we kind of all spread out. We moved to various different states and things like that. And then I started working for the nonprofit at that time because I was too far away from my actual community. And I was focusing on nonprofit housing, which is domestic violence, sobriety, reentry, and of course, because my entire background and passion is human services. And so how can I provide services? How can I ensure that everyone is safe? But more so, how can I ensure that in every aspect, every walk of life, that there's still a high value of quality care, concern, that they're enjoying themselves despite financial situation or despite, in terms of the locations and opportunities and resources provided. Right. So I started doing a lot of focusing on how to make things available to people. So in terms of if you're reentry, how can I provide you support in terms of that transition when you're moving out and having stable housing, domestic violence? How do you have a safe haven, homeless veteran, those type of things? And then I became a resident relations director in actually a big box community for about 4 or 5 years prior to then being a state inspector. And so being a state inspector, that was my passion. Like that was my passion, outside of being in a family owned, environment, with like everybody was grandmother, grandfather. But as you start to branch out, and of course, when you are in that field or when you're owner operator, your whole thought, or to me, everything that kind of overwhelms you is, okay, state inspectors coming, or you're getting that call. And when I was younger, I just recall my mother being such a strong person, a strong, influential piece, and people getting nervous when she comes on site, but also having that same feeling of when the state inspector came on site. And which had just been my passion in order to, an advancement that I truly, truly wanted to be an inspector. And opportunity presented itself. And, definitely I went for it. I loved being an inspector because I loved having the opportunity to be able to share those things, not anything internal protocol, but being able to share those things that would be helpful as an owner operator if things could have been explained a little bit better, if things could have been, more understood and things. But also at the capacity where I was a state inspector, I did a lot of education and training. So I did a lot of teaching, and that was one piece of it. So how do I get to here? That's kind of all the pieces leading up to it. And then I started real estate investing. I did 17 fix and flips, and it just kind of all came together. And between real estate investing, being a state inspector, owner operator, loving to provide education, loving seniors, it just kind of all came together.
Wow. Okay. You like to hustle, and I do too. So I'm already connecting on so many levels. Let's go back I want to talk about something you said as an inspector. I can see where people would get antsy about having an inspector come on site. And we talk a lot in our community about how everyone involved, you really need to picture them as a partner in your business. The inspector's not there to hurt you. It is my perception, right? The inspector is there to make sure you're doing things in a safe and adequate way, to make sure you're providing the best possible care and the best staff. I mean, it would almost be a red flag to me if there weren't any state inspections. So, give me your honest opinion on how your inspections were received, and what was, I don't know, the most challenging thing about it, and maybe the craziest thing you saw or the biggest mistakes you've seen in some homes when it comes to inspections.
Let's see. The challenging pieces that I saw from being an inspector was because one, I was an owner operator for so long that being a state inspector gave you the clear understanding of how to I'm not sure if it was a challenge. I guess let me focus more on the benefits. It gave me more of a better understanding of how to stay in compliance while keeping my census up. So more so thinking outside of the box, right? And so that is what I found. And that is when I'm consulting what I'm really pushing on, because in terms of, the areas, if you're not at 100% capacity, and then, you're always having that friction between, your DON and your marketing. Right. In terms of, your marketing is pulling them in, your DON is trying to put them out because, hey, we can't meet state regulations. But there's so many things that I have found in terms of being a state inspector that truly is in compliance, which I felt on the owner operator side that I did not realize and I did not know. And I believe that the biggest issue is because of breakdown in communication, in terms of people being uncomfortable with asking their inspector those questions, asking their inspector for clarification. A lot of times I try to have people to understand that inspectors, they can't actually give you too much information due to liability. They are consistently referring you back to the regulations. So, a lot of times they're not supposed to think of their own way to fix the problem. However, when I became a consultant, I feel better that now I'm at this position of, hey, here are some helpful ideas. There are some ways to do it. This is what I have seen have worked. As an
Right.
inspector, they can't always do that. And that's just because of the position and they're directed not to do so. So a lot of times people, I wish someone said they would just tell me this, but no, they always direct you back to the regulations.
Gosh, isn't that the government way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
if let's say you were inspecting my home and you said, "Hey, you can't do XYZ. You need to go back and look at the regulation." If I called you up and came to you with one or two potential solutions, could I run those by you as an inspector and say, "Will this meet the intent of the code?" Would you be able to answer yes or no as an
so
inspector? As an inspector.
Okay, inspector
Yeah.
wise. So inspector wise, if you were to give me some suggestions and some solutions or ideas of what you would want to do, I would just tell you in terms of that specific regulation, if it's in compliance. What you're asking me, just yes, what you're asking me is in compliance with the regulations.
Okay.
Or no, it's not in compliance with the regulations. So I do oftentimes encourage people, so to present and ask those type of questions, in terms of saying, hey, I have an idea. I wanted to know, can I do this? And maybe you can always leave, will this be in compliance? Because sometimes I can get and I can understand how people will say, hey, I'm not understanding why they just don't want to communicate with me. It's not that they're just limited on what type of feedback and support they can truly give. However, if you ask the question, they can give you an answer, yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And for everyone listening, don't be afraid to call the inspector if you have a question. If you failed something specifically and you have ideas for how to fix it, call and ask. Don't just kind of wing it and say, "Well, I think this meets the intent. We'll have to see when they come by." No, like just open that lane of communications. Yes, they're only allowed to say so much, but I would
And I
encourage people
do
to try.
think that was one piece that was a challenge for me, because in terms of like the question you asked earlier, so in terms of being the challenge, because as the operator, I had so many suggestions and things that I wanted to say. I had so much of ways that people can fix it. That was such an easy quick fix. But knowing that you have to separate the two in terms of, okay, I can only say yes or no, this is compliance or not in compliance. And then also, I guess, being in, what were the biggest mistakes that I've seen? One, yes, the miscommunication. Two, in terms of what we really push now, in terms of understanding how to advocate for yourself. That is one thing that many people don't really take advantage of or are comfortable with doing. How do you advocate for yourself? How do you ensure that you're receiving fair treatment? How do you ensure that the violation you receive is truly appropriately cited for the citation or what was observed? What I find is oftentimes many things in licensing, which should not be, but they are subjective. And oftentimes it's based on my past experience, your past experience. So I often tell people, and when I'm doing my education and training, I say, okay, you have 5 people on the table. Some are nurses, doctors, physicians, lawyers. Some has focused on mental health. If I say that the wound is healing, everybody has a different perception of what a healing wound is. However, what is the regulations say? Is it
Mm.
based on that? Who can say that the wound is healing? And I'll go down and people, well, it's healing if it's this measurement, if this. That's not intent of the regulations. It's not for the person to say, I have to be a medical doctor in order to follow, And so truly, who defines if the wound is healing is the resident's physician. Like simple answer, resident's physician. So I've enjoyed myself in order to be able to provide those type of examples and that type of support. But how do you advocate for yourself, and ensuring that you are aware of the timelines and what you can do?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. You should still stand up for yourself. Okay, let's put you in the mindset of both owning homes and consulting with folks about owning homes and even helping to manage homes. What is the most surprising challenge either you faced or you see folks face when they're starting their first assisted living home, and how do they overcome it?
So there's 2 things, and it really does not apply somewhere in Virginia. It's really outside. Many people buy investment properties, large scale properties, anything. They go in all in without having a true understanding if the building can actually be used for some sort of adult program. They take that property, they spend hundreds of thousands, and they renovate it. And when they renovate it, the idea was, hey, we're gonna have a 16 bed. they renovated it and the rooms are now too small and you now have to have a 8 bed, so people are purchasing these properties in areas that can't be licensed. The zoning doesn't apply, it doesn't work with it, or there's something with in terms of life safety codes that prevents this building from being licensed, and then they purchase and make all these changes, and then they're stuck, or they had thought of a perfect scenario in terms of how much money they're going to make. However, they wanted 16 beds. Now they converted and they're only going to get 8, and it doesn't work, the whole situation. So what I have found is just, some of the issues are definitely not doing the due diligence, and I tell people, if you're not quite sure, then, you want to find you someone who's very well versed in it, or, find yourself a consultant, or outside of that, I tell people, pick up the phone and call zoning, call zoning, call your fire marshal. I'm like, that's what they're there for, and I tell people, and I'm not sure if they know, but you have the opportunity to ask for a consultation, from any entity, it's there, it's free, and it's available. And that's one thing for each program that we're going to start. It always starts with the consultation. Get it in writing, pre-approval. And so I want to say that is, in terms of operator, that's one of the biggest pieces that I have found. The other piece that I have found is in terms of the lack of marketing, right? Yeah. I have people that would say, hey, can you tell me what works great? Is this place like, overwhelmed? Is it too many facilities here? I can tell them I can find the area that has one assisted living in the entire state, right? If you don't market, it doesn't work.
It'll be empty.
From ground zero, I always push at the very beginning. If you don't have money or not enough money in your budget for anything, put money in the budget for marketing. I tell them I would rather you not do 100%, cosmetic repairs over, so you can actually utilize that money for your marketing. I tell them relationships matter. Face-to-face interaction, it matters. And if you don't do it, or if you wait too long, you miss the window, then that's just how much longer it's going to take you to catch up. But you've got to get out there. People have to know you. They have to be comfortable. So for instance, when people come to me, they say, hey, I have these communities. Are you able to place? And I tell them I have to know you. So I place in the communities that I work with because I know them, I see, I trust, right? But I said, that's just like you when you're going to a social worker or anywhere else, hey, I've got this community. Okay, great. But I don't know you, So I was like, relationships matter. If you want to market, be consistent, build those relationships and it will come. So marketing and not being prepared and doing the due diligence.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. We'll probably only get to a little bit of it, but let's talk about marketing for just a second, because that's one of the things we do talk about a lot on the podcast is staying full. What are your favorite techniques for marketing or marketing channels to attract residents to a home?
Wow. There's so many options, but I love seniors. I mean, when I say I love seniors, and if I could have ever chosen what I wanted to be, would probably be just the activities director all day long. But what I do is I usually have our host like education and training events at multiple different facilities. So if we're going to have, let's say that we need to have individualized service plan training. So I will open it up to many different people, invite them to come. Our activities are really big hits. So, you have your Fridays, ice cream socials. I have the food trucks come. We do mini petting zoos, open it up to the community, utilizing your volunteers, all of those free resources, right? And I tell people there's so many free resources. And when you have those events, open them up, to other people, your social workers. I just attended a holiday banquet where you have all of the social workers giving them a thank you dinner. We do professional events and education where you can get continual education credits. Doing those training there on site, keeping that relationship open. I do monthly meetup groups on site. I used to have an office. I just realized that I was going to all of my communities. So it just got to the point where I never needed to utilize the office to have meetings. So my favorite marketing ones are definitely things that don't cost much, honestly, providing just trainings and education and opening it up, to everyone to come out.
Opening up the home to the community and to referral partners, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, like you said, it's cheap. You don't have to have a massive marketing budget to do that. You don't need to be spending tens of thousands of dollars on Google Ads to do that. What I find fascinating is so many of these homes don't even have a website or a Google My Business page. And it's like, how do you expect people to find you, without any presence anywhere? Or you can have a Facebook page and open it up to events like that. But if you have no presence anywhere, it's just baffling to me why people they're posting in our Facebook group all the time. I need residents now. Where's a placement agent? And there's nothing against placement agents, but like you have to have other avenues too. Like, and the more avenues you have, the easier it'll be. And all of those tools were free that we just mentioned. You could start a YouTube channel. That's free. I mean, it's just, it's mind boggling to me.
We have a large number of individuals who, of course, there's smaller facilities and you've got your managers that really can't get out in the community that much, right? So it's a little bit harder for them to be able to market and understand that. That's what's like, get them to come in. However, what we do for some of our communities, if they can't absolutely get out for face-to-face, then what we would do is we have a couple of our assistants will call around to build your resource management information. So your customer supports and your data, so you can at least communicate with them through email or via phone. So if you have a community and, we'll start off, okay, maybe we'll secure you 50 contacts. That means those who are specific to the population you serve, and the location where you are at. So we will pull that information and that data for you if you cannot physically get out in the community. It will provide that for you. So then you can try to build the communication via phone, email.
Awesome.
It's kind of better than nothing.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great feature and service you provide. I think that's excellent because a lot of folks don't know where to start, right? Who are the 50 best referral contacts to have in my database? You providing that is an excellent opportunity. I'm sure it includes placement agent, maybe like discharge coordinators, social workers. And wow, that's awesome. And you probably have all of the lists in all of the states at this point, right? You've already got your lists ready to go.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Hey there, sorry to interrupt this episode, but I've got a question for you. Do you want to share in the wealth and incredible returns from the highest demand asset class in real estate without the hassle of doing it all yourself, or at least not yet? Residential assisted living is booming and it's only gaining momentum. That's why we created an investment fund at Open Range Capital, so you can benefit without the heavy lifting. With the silver tsunami upon us, demand for assisted living is far outpacing supply, making this the can't miss opportunity for the next few decades. We provide access to fully vetted investment opportunities that are primed for success and ready to deliver strong passive returns. Don't wait, ride the wave with us. Visit theralroom.com/invest to partner with us on future investment opportunities. Again, that's theralroom.com/invest. We look forward to connecting with you. Now back to the episode.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about the first assisted living home you personally or you and your family opened? Like, how many beds was it? Where was it? Tell me a little bit about that.
So the first one was 32 bed. Yeah, so first one was 32 bed, and honestly, it was not actually like, in terms of the maxing out, like in terms of 6,000 or 8,000 a bed. It's actually more provided for. So there's a couple of organizations that do charitable. So I have 5 or 6 communities that will cash flow very well. However, every bed here can provide a bed for our lower housing. So lower affordable housing. So the 32 bed, and one thing that's great about that community is because every employee that was there had been there since the day it opened. Yes, I have been there since the day it was open. Assisted living, my grandmother and my mother were the licensed administrators, and basically it was very family involved. So in terms of, my sister who did the billing and accounting, my other sister who's a social worker, and so myself of doing the managing and the oversight. And so just in terms of that stayed at 100% capacity. And I really believe it was more so because of our community involvement. So we were very involved in the community. So we're consistently so everyone knew us, they're comfortable with us. And as well as we provided medical transport. So we had a medical transport company as well. So we were able to build insurance for the medical transport. We also had a CNA medtech school. So when we come in, we provided education and training for all of our communities. But I enjoyed it. And so in terms of the activities, we had 2 different locations. We had our assisted living, and then on the other side of it, 2 separate locations but connected was an adult daycare, in which you have to keep it completely separate. You can't send those who have come to assisted living over to adult daycare because they call it double dipping, of course. So you keep it completely separate. But that was the first one. And that was the first one that actually was financially in terms of partnership, 100% capacity. However, because it was a charitable, it's definitely not like your typical, I want to say a 32 bed at those rates, probably still cash flow comparable to less than 16.
Okay. Less than a
So
16 bed private pay.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So most folks out here, okay, they buy their first home. It's like a 10 to 16 bed, right? And that's what we aim to help folks do is a private pay 10 to 16 bed, get their feet wet, get in the door, have it be, income producing enough to have a on-site manager, right? So they're not necessarily just totally all in on it. But you went for a 32 bed charitable with an adult daycare, with a training agency, and with a non-emergency transport company all at once. What was going through your mind to want to just like take that entire thing, amalgamation, just say, yes, this is the one, we're doing it?
So I believe it was, to me, it seems like everything that, or anytime I have the opportunity, it was something that was rare that I didn't actually go and search for. It was something that presented an opportunity to me. And, after assessing or, saying, hey, maybe if I could go in with a partner or something like that, and then understanding the resources, but having the right connections. And so it's like, okay, well, hey, it's a done deal. You have everything that you need. And, looking at it, okay, it may not cash flow in terms of for me, what I'm looking for. However, it was wanting to be able to provide care that was more cost effective and more affordable for those who were in the area. Because specifically, we all know those facilities that are, the state funded facilities, and we hear horror stories about it. And being on both sides, I can truly understand why. Because low rates, how can you provide quality care? How can you provide enough staffing? How can you provide
It's a
for
catch
anything that
22.
they need?
Yeah, it's a catch.
Um,
Yeah.
so I truly understood, and in order to make something like that work, it has to be offset by something else. You can't have just one low income facility in order to in order to say, hey, I'm going to be able to give these residents the best care, because you truly can't do it at that rate. So my desire was, yes, am I in a position to be able to provide affordable care at a lower rate? Investments and endeavors that can offset the cost of it. That was my more meaningful, more desirable.
Yeah. Yeah. You were trying to have a major impact, and financially you could do it due to the other businesses and other homes. And I think that's beautiful. It is something a lot of folks wanting to get into this struggle with, because they have huge hearts and they want to have a meaningful impact, and they want to take government subsidized, which in some states is really high, but in most states is not.
Right.
Right. And so in a lot of states, just, taking any resident government subsidized lower dollar, you're talking half the national average or less. Unfortunately, your expenses are also high. You have to pay a staff. You can't not pay them. You can't just, you have to pay the utilities. You have to feed everyone. You have to provide, a great environment and a great home, which has maintenance, right? And you've got cosmetic improvements. So, you look at the full picture, and the only way to provide the best care, really, realistically, in a lot of these homes is private pay. So it is a weird situation we're in. Maybe we'll see that change over time, especially as this silver tsunami comes. Maybe there will be more government subsidized, or maybe they'll increase the subsidies. I don't know. I'm not sure where the money would come from on the other hand. But yeah, it is quite an interesting dilemma. So on that first home, I usually ask this question, and I'm just curious about for you as well. Financing. It could be a tough piece for a lot of folks for their first home. How did you go about financing that crazy 32 bed plus everything else opportunity?
So really, it's more so going through private investors.
Okay.
So again, started going through private investors and having opportunities, basically, presenting to them my business plan in terms of, showing my credibility, how I'm able to make it sustain, but also showing them the resources that I had in place to be able to make sure that we can make it successful. Ensuring that I had a really strong business plan to give them a timeline in terms of, what we were going to return back to them, what's the deadline, how much holding time that we need, how much time until we were at 75% capacity, 100%. And that was truly the best way. It was really hard to get funding through bank because of SBA and those limitations and things like that. The property was actually leased, and so I was able to actually lease out the property, but it was just starting up, working cash and the capital to get started in the furnishing and things like that. And so really going through private investors and just presenting a strong business plan.
That's awesome. I want to talk about that for a second. So the first 5 homes we did were all lease to operator. So kind of you leased a home for assisted living. We bought homes and leased them to assisted living operators like yourself. So it actually makes for a really good partnership in a lot of ways, because it's expensive to buy the real estate and fund the business, because a lot of people are like, okay, fine, I just got to get the house and it'll be fine. I won't need any money after that. No, until you get to a certain occupancy, you're going to negative cash flow for those first few months. So it's important to have I call it a business runway, a cash runway. And we have a calculator that like projects what this should be for your home based on all your expenses, your payroll. Like you have 1 resident, you now have full-time staff. So, but that full-time staff costs more than that 1 resident. It probably costs more than 5 residents, right? So you have to get to a certain point before you're cash flow positive. So you have to have that business runway. So a lot of times it's hard to have that business runway and buy the real estate. So a good solution is to find a place to lease instead of buy. That's an option to get started. Like you said, SBA can be challenging, especially for the first one. So that then opens an opportunity for investors. And we've done the same thing. We raise money from investors, and people think it's this crazy hard thing to do. And I just want to challenge a lot of folks. And we do this in the Row Room. Like we challenge everyone. Yes, we can raise money for you if you want us to. However, you can raise money yourself. Anybody can. And there's a secret to it. You ready for the secret? Most people don't have access to opportunities like this. So you on your Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever you like to be on social media can simply talk about what you're doing, and that will attract people to you, because most people only have access to stock market, 401k, crappy investments that do maybe 7% before taxes in the long run. They don't have access to opportunities like this where they could have just a private note opportunity to make 10% a year. They could have an equity play where they may also win with you on the upside of the new value of the business. So I just think it's beautiful because it's a win-win for everyone involved. You're not trying to steal people's money. You are giving them an opportunity and you win together. And I just think that's awesome. And personally, it took me until basically this year to shift my mindset, because I hadn't raised money until, actually, I guess it was late last year. And then I found, oh, I love this. I love sending checks to investors every month. They love it too, right? And so it just opens more doors for more investor money down the road. So I would encourage a lot of folks to kind of open their minds to raising money. Would you agree?
Definitely. To me, that's the best thing. I have so many people where they would just come and say, "Hey, I want to do this. I always say I have a heart of gold, but my pockets are empty." And I tell them, I'm like, you can always just ask. And I think a lot of times people are prideful, or I think that they're not exactly sure how to. And I tell them, I was like, "Hey, it's easy. I mean, it's a need." I'm like, don't be ashamed. I was like, because there's a lot of people who don't have cash. There's a lot of people who don't have the cash. And then it's you just ask and reach out.
Yeah, and it's important to know how to properly pitch a deal as well. Like, you don't want it to sound like you're, money hungry and yada yada. What you want to be able to do is show the facts, show the what's in it for me. And this was really interesting. I got this from a buddy of mine at a mastermind meetup that I was at, that I'm part of. And he talked about DISC profiles. Are you familiar with DISC personality profiles? Okay, so everyone is a high D or high I or high S or high C, whatever, however your profile lies. Well, each of those 4 personality types needs to hear something different in a pitch like that. And one of the 4 types probably is never going to invest with you anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the 3 of them need to hear something different. Like one needs to hear, hey, what's in it for me? What are the returns? One needs to hear, how are you mitigating risk? One needs to hear, what's the impact that I'm making with my money, right? And so if you make a pitch that covers all of that, you're going to be able to really deliver a better pitch and have people more likely to invest with you. You got to understand, most people are probably not going to jump in because the timing may be wrong. Maybe it's their last $25,000, which you don't want to be taking that, right? They're probably not in the best financial situation, or maybe the timeline doesn't really work for them. That's totally fine, okay? There are plenty of people who do have money that it will be right for them. You just have to reach enough folks. And so we really like to do a webinar. We'll talk about it a bunch. We'll get everybody on a webinar, and then we'll send the replay out. And That works for us. Do you
I
do that as well?
always tell my clients when we're looking for properties to purchase or money to fundraise or to, to gain money. I always tell them, I said, create your love letter, right? And that's always, I create your love letter. I said, I said, we see a property one, we're competing for it, right? However, we're probably the most least qualified for this property, right? Probably everybody else and probably have cash. I said, but what's the difference, in terms of how do we get above and get seen above everybody else? And we call it, I said, write your love letter, So you write, on the things that what's motivating you, why do you want to do it, all of the passions behind it. I said, so, we'll make this offer and we're going to send it with our love letter. We're going to create our business plan and we're going to, send it with a love letter. And it truly, or we want this rental property, we're going to send it with a love letter, and it truly makes a world of a difference. Get people, because relationships matter. I tell everybody relationships matter. They're so important, and they want to know if, okay, I have property, you want to rent it. I want to make sure that you're not going to tear it up, So how do I ensure that you are going to take good care of my property? And hey, I'm going to write you a love letter because I love this property. And here's why. And this is my desire of what I want to do. So write the love letter, it helps.
That's such great advice. It completely sets you apart. I will say, because I was a licensed real estate agent in Florida, that it became a banned practice, real estate agent anyway, in the state. Now, if you're going direct to seller, absolutely, you could still do that. Yeah, or direct to owner for renting. And in some states, it may still be fine. So talk to your real estate agent. But a love letter just means, basically kind of like a cover letter that goes on top of your offer or desire to lease or whatever it may be, that says, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's my mission. And if you have that versus the exact same offer or even a better offer without one, sometimes you win. Because honestly, a lot of this, real estate is for a lot of folks very emotional. It's a very emotional thing, and they want to sell their property to the right person. I was talking to a gentleman who owned a big plot of land nearby me. I was like, I want to buy that, and this is what I want to do with it. Build assisted living on it. He's like, that's fantastic. They're turning everything here into data centers, and I don't want it to be a data center. Ultimately, though, I couldn't pay the price that he wanted on it, so it wasn't going to shake out. But like, that was another thing. He would be willing to sell that commercial property for potentially millions less for a different use than what he didn't want to see in his community he's been a part of for decades. He's owned that land for 30 years, so it's crazy. And he's an investor type, but he still has an emotional tie to it and didn't want to have that use. So always love that, Kimberly. Pull at the heartstrings a little bit and set yourself apart. And it's another way to fight for yourself in a way, is like, here's the mission I'm trying to accomplish. And holy smokes, is the mission important for us. And if every single person you talk to and I talk to about assisted living went and opened 100 homes, we would make a minuscule impact on what's actually needed. So anyway, the impact we can make is mind-boggling, and the demand is crazy. So, okay, with that, let's transition a little bit to trends. Okay. You talk to a lot of folks in the industry across a lot of states. What are the biggest trends you're seeing in assisted living, especially when it comes to residential assisted living right now? Or how do you see this model evolving or growing over the next few years?
So one thing that I do see, and that's one, is the 16 bed, and it's the 16 bed. A lot of different states that we work in, the 16 bed model is regulated where it actually makes a difference. So oftentimes I do see that trend. So you're looking at the 16 bed, like in many states, if you're under 16, then the regulations are less stringent than when you're 17 and above. But then you have a lot of other states that whether you are at 16 or at 17, the impact is still the same in terms of regulations. So I have a lot of times I have builders that will come to me in those states where the 16 or 17 is still the same and they're still focused on the 16. So in terms of the trend, I do see specifically that the 16 is becoming the norms across all states, regardless of the regulations and the red tape when you get to the 17 and above. In terms of the trends, I'm definitely seeing the 16 when you're building from ground up.
We have folks in our mastermind building 6-bed memory care homes. And so it does seem like there's a lot of good efficiencies, but you're still small enough to feel residential and to provide optimal care.
Yes. Yeah.
I do love that. I wish that was a thing in Virginia. A little bit harder to do in Virginia, but so for anyone who's on the fence that, maybe has a healthcare background or has a big heart that's interested in getting involved in assisted living, what would you say to them?
You said what was you said when I was thinking about getting into assisted living, what did I?
No, if for anyone listening right now, if they're on the fence about getting into assisted living, what would you say to them?
So the name of my company is Actionable Words. So I tell people, if it's something that you want to do specifically in the realm of assisted living, the longer you sit, the more money you are losing. Right? The longer you sit and you're watching, you are losing because it works. It works. If you do it the way it should work or market and things like that, make sure your numbers make sense. It works. I tell everyone the only thing that you need to do is take action, right? It's like, what are your next steps? I meet with, or I get calls and people want to speak, almost 15, 20 people a day. And in terms of, I can teach a course, how to start your assisted living, the basics. However, if you walk away with no steps to follow, no action to follow, what difference did it make? You're repeating and saying the same thing over the last 10 years, and you've lost all of that money over the last 5 to 10 years. If you're sitting on the fence, I would say make yourself a plan. You need to take action. You need to set dates, work towards your goal, because the way that things are set up, the economy, the need exists, the need exists. And if you're on the fence, you just need to take action, jump in and get started.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's how I got started in real estate. I bought 8 units, multifamily, as a brand new dad, and just said, I'm just going to figure this out. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, so don't recommend doing those. But I still was successful with that one and moved on from there. And you're going to make mistakes. That is part of learning and growing. And success is built on a foundation of mistakes that you make, you learn from and build from. You're just not going to accomplish anything in life without those, mistakes along the way. That's part of it. If you're looking for some just general steps, you can download a 10-step guide we put together at therowroom.com. But more importantly is any step you think you need can be, even if it feels overwhelming, you can break it down into the very next thing. I'm a big fan of The One Thing by Gary Keller. Great, fantastic book. Helps you just break down like, what's the one thing I need to do where everything else becomes irrelevant, right? The tasks that actually matter. It's not important to take a bunch of things to check them off, but it's important to know what the most important things are and to focus on those and to take action. Another thing that we do in our mastermind is we put people into small pods. They're accountability pods. And so you meet with your group every week, and your group's going to hold you accountable to the things you said you were going to do last week. And so that kind of forces the action. Sometimes some of us, including myself, need that. I go to 1-2 every week, and it forces me. Like, here's an example. This week on Monday was my accountability pod meeting. And I told everyone else last week that I was going to call that landowner I told you about earlier, about his land, to see if he'd be willing to sell for assisted living. And it was a half hour before the start of the call, and I hadn't called him yet. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to tell everyone that I didn't do it. And I was like, you know what? No, dialed him right then. Spoke to him, got it done. I was like, good thing I had that accountability pod, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. So, and you don't have to be in a mastermind to do that. You can simply have an accountability buddy. You can have a consultant like yourself who probably holds people accountable. So there's just lots of ways to do that, but you don't have to do it alone. Okay, Kimberly, you are very knowledgeable. How can listeners learn more from you and reach out to you without overwhelming you? Because it sounds like a lot of folks do. What's the best way for folks to get into contact with you?
So the best way we have a couple of different staff members that actually support us on the back ends and things like that. The best way to get in contact is by going to our website, actionowgroup.com. And you can actually go on there and fill out a request form, put your specifics, what you need. And there's a first point of contact that steps in kind of like same day in a few hours, and she'll speak with you and chat. She'll give you some helpful resources, videos that are sent out and things like that. And then they'll actually connect you so they can actually, connect with me.
Okay. actionowgroup.com, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. Kimberly, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Raw Room Assisted Living Podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a raving 5-star review. And a quick review helps more listeners find the show and more seniors get the exceptional care they deserve.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And just so you know, we have prepared some free resources for you to help you succeed in residential assisted living in addition to this podcast. Head over to theralroom.com, that is theralroom.com, to download our free 10-step guide to launch your first or next residential assisted living home, or our 10 reasons to passively invest in residential assisted living ebooks.
And if you're ready to take the next step and make real moves in the RAL industry, join us in the Raw Room Mastermind. It is an exclusive community where we deep dive into everything you need to launch and grow your own residential assisted living business. You'll get access to recorded courses, live calls with industry experts, a RAL calculator, resources and tools, like-minded entrepreneurs, funding opportunities, and an expert networking community to help you along your journey.
Be sure to join us next time on the Raw Room Podcast as we continue to explore the world of residential assisted living with more great guests. See you then.